Good afternoon. We are going to get started here in just 1 second. I'd invite astronaut Zena Cardman to join me as I do some remarks, and we can just slide right in. Again, we have a lot of great opportunities here today. So I know some folks are still joining, but we're going to keep on time. My name is Susan White. I'm the director of the North Carolina Space Grant Program, and I have the privilege of welcoming you to our annual North Carolina Space Symposium. Our symposium today celebrates not only our current students, our program alumni, but also the partners that you'll meet over the course of the day. They'll provide insights and opportunities into career pathways. So throughout this afternoon, we're excited to highlight recent research and education advances for the state of North Carolina. This forum really is designed to support the development and expansion of professional networks and opportunities. And we hope you take advantage of those through the question and answer opportunities with our speakers. And, you know, to understand who is in the room, if we were together, we have over 250 attendees, including representation from NASA, our National Space Grant Program, other space grant programs across the nation, academia, industry, K-12 educators, and members of the public, including my third grade son down there. So welcome. Impressively, over 120 of our attendees are students, and that really is one of the drivers of North Carolina Space Grant and the space grant programs. We'd also like to welcome our representatives from many of our congressional offices. Congresswoman Ross will be giving comments here shortly and just a little bit further in our agenda, but also representatives from Senator Tillis's office, Congresswoman Adams, Congressman Budd, Congressman Butterfield, Congressman McHenry, and Congressman Rouser. It's a pleasure to have all this great representation today to better understand NASA resources in North Carolina. Really, this program, as you've seen in the agenda, is tight. It would not have been able to come together without the leadership of Joby Cook and Sandy Canfield, both leaders with NC Space Grant. And many thanks to our speakers, our moderators, and our career panelists at the end of the day, who really have made great time commitments to join us today for the benefit of the program. So in addition to the presentations that you're about to hear, we offer also pre-recorded speakers and talks for posters on our website. So these are undergraduate and graduate students who have also received North Carolina Space Grant funding awards in the last 2 years. So please do join us on the website. Those are wonderful resources and they're inspirational. And the students have done an amazing job with those pre-recorded, just as the students are going to do an amazing job in live performance today. So in fast shape here to kick off our symposium in great style, I am very pleased to introduce astronaut Zena Cardman. She is a former North Carolina Space Grant funded student many times over. And as your questions for Zena arise, I'd encourage you to use the Q&A feature in your Zoom, just down low on your screen, to put in your questions, and those will be moderated at the end of when Zena's comments are done. So as a little background on Zena, she's a native of Williamsburg, Virginia. She graduated from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill in 2010 with a bachelor's degree in biology, honors in poetry, and a minor's in marine science, creative writing, and chemistry. She then earned a master's of science degree in marine science from UNC Chapel Hill in 2014. As I said, when she was at Carolina, she received multiple NC Space Grant awards, and we are just very excited to be able to host her today and appreciate her making the time. Her research efforts as an undergrad really and a graduate student looked at some of the most remote and extreme environments on Earth, from the Arctic to the Antarctic. Zena was selected in 2017 by NASA to join the astronaut candidate class. And at the time, she was at Penn State and had a National Science Foundation graduate research fellow looking at microbial metabolism and biogeochemical cycling in cave systems. We're very excited. Those are wonderful sciences for us. While at Penn State, Zena also received 2 Pennsylvania Space Grant programs. So she is a Space Grant alum many times over. So one of our own. In January 2020, Zena was among 11 NASA astronaut candidates who were the first graduates under the Artemis program. The Artemis program is aiming to land the first woman and next man on the moon by 2024. And so she's now eligible for spaceflight, including assignments to the International Space Station, Artemis missions to the moon, and potentially missions to Mars. So please join me in welcoming Space Grant alum, astronaut Zena Cardman. Thank you, Zena.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. It really is a pleasure to be here. And the only thing I'm sad about is that we can't all be together in person, but this chance to talk to you really feels like coming home for me anytime I have the opportunity to speak with the Space Grant. As they mentioned, I was supported so often throughout the years by the Space Grant, and North Carolina feels like it has affected the course of my life in a really profound way. So I'm very excited to be speaking with you all. Let me share my screen here and we'll get going. I want to leave lots of time for questions at the end. That's my favorite part of speaking with you. Okay. So anytime I speak to the Space Grant, I like to start here. This is the toilet on Axel Heiberg Island, which is in the Canadian High Arctic at about 80 degrees latitude north. So it's really high up there. This is a rusted old fuel barrel with a plastic seat stuck on top, and it is extremely cold. Takes a little bit of courage to sit down on this seat. But once you do, you are rewarded with arguably the best view from any toilet in the world, I would reckon. But, you know, I was here as an undergraduate supported by the Space Grant, and I was there, you know, not so much to soak in the landscape, but really there to study this environment as an analog for what other planets might be like, what kinds of life might be hosted on a planet like Mars, or even in early Earth's history. And there are perennial springs on Axel Heiberg Island. These are really interesting systems that flow liquid water year round, whether it's minus 40 degrees or plus 15 Celsius. And that's because they flow up through gypsum, through this very salty structure. And so it acts like an antifreeze and supports this really robust yet very smelly microbial life year round. And it's a great analog for what we might find elsewhere in the solar system. I sort of made a habit of studying the slimy, the underground, the most bizarre life on Earth, whether that's in a deep sea hydrothermal vent or underground in caves. I also eventually made it to the other end of the planet to study Antarctica and the really interesting ecosystem there that changes throughout the course of the year and from season to season. And of course, in all of these places, I was incredibly interested in the biology and the chemistry, how it all relates to the geochemistry of the Earth, how that affects the microorganisms, how the microorganisms affect their environment. But ultimately, my favorite part of all of these research projects was the team of people that I got to work with. It's not just the scientists, but also the engineers, the plumbers, the cooks, everyone who makes it happen and comes together. How do you get science out of a place that is so remote that you really feel like you're not supposed to be there? And I grew to love that operational side of research, the teamwork aspect of it, about as much as the science itself. And so that really ultimately is why I applied to be a NASA scientist and to be an astronaut. That to me was the ultimate opportunity to become a team member in, you know, the most profound, largest scale research project I could possibly imagine. I feel very lucky every day to have been selected in 2017. These are my classmates, the Turtles, and they really feel like family at this point. We, at this point, don't know which vehicle we will be flying on, but as of, let's see, January of last year, we all graduated our initial candidacy, and we now qualify for spaceflight. And in fact, some of my classmates will be launching later this year, which is really exciting. So you'll start to see more and more of us in space soon. But it's, I think, the most exciting time to be a part of human spaceflight because we have so many different options for which vehicles we might be flying on. We may be taking a Soyuz, we might be riding the Boeing Starliner, we might be riding a SpaceX Dragon or Orion, even beyond low Earth orbit. For now, we are going to the International Space Station. That is our current ongoing mission. It is a phenomenal international laboratory. It's actually also a United States National Lab. And this is a place where we have been living and working sustainably for 20 years now. That's really amazing. It's kind of unfathomable. So as astronauts, and especially as new astronauts, all of our training is really geared towards living and working on the International Space Station. So that includes taking classes on all of the engineering systems on board, the layout of the space station, how to connect things, how to make it run in a normal case and also in emergency cases. We also study robotics, how to drive someone who's riding on the end of a giant robotic arm during a spacewalk, or how to capture a cargo vehicle that's coming to bring supplies to the space station. We also use T-38 jets. These are small supersonic trainer jets. And this is one of our only opportunities where the sensations, the G-forces, and the stakes are really truly real and not just a simulation. And the views are not bad either. This is an amazing aircraft. And again, one of my favorite parts of it is getting to work in a really close team. You sit 2 seats, one in front of the other, and just getting to figure out how to operate in this really high-paced, high-stakes environment is an absolute thrill. We also use the T-38 as a chance to practice our mechanical repair skills. So this is, some of my classmates working on the underbelly of a T-38 and, the business end, the jet engine end of the T-38. And it's great practice because when you're on the space station, if, say, the toilet breaks, this is the toilet on the International Space Station, you'll see a running theme in my life career here. If it breaks in orbit, you can't just call a plumber. And so you have to not only be the scientist, the researcher, the engineer, but also the plumber, the mechanic, the electrician for your home and your research laboratory. One of, I think, the most fun and also hardest things that we train for is spacewalking. We do this in the neutral buoyancy laboratory. It's a ginormous swimming pool that has a 1-to-1 scale mock-up of the International Space Station underwater. And this is where we go to put on our spacesuits and train to do repairs and science outside of the space station. So to do that, you first don your special undergarments. These are the liquid cooling and ventilation garments we wear underneath the spacesuit. And then it takes a little bit of help while you're down here on Earth to get the spacesuit on. On Earth, it weighs about 300 pounds. So you need a little help from your friends to get the outfit on. And then they submerge you underwater on this crane. And then you are free to go to work, learning to operate all of the tools, repair, replace all of the different equipment that's on the outside of the space station that helps it run. And that, of course, is with the eventual goal of doing that for real outside of the International Space Station. These are 2 of my colleagues, Jessica and Christina, actually a little over a year ago now doing the first all-female spacewalk. And Christina here on the right is another Space Grant alum, so we're very, very proud. And it's not just repair of equipment that's keeping the space station functioning, it's also repair of incredible science experiments. This little box on top of the space station is called AMS, the Alpha Magnetic Spectrometer, and it is a world-class nuclear physics, particle physics experiment that was never meant to be repaired, but it needed to be, and they successfully did that in orbit, which is just unfathomably cool. We also learn things like photography and Earth observation, and that's because our most important job on the space station is doing research for Earth, for our home planet, things like observing the wildfires that were ongoing last fall in the West, in California and beyond, and observing volcanic eruptions, taking pictures of chlorophyll blooms in the ocean through time. And just like I, the scientists, learn how to fly jets, my jet pilot colleagues learn how to do geoscience and field research. And that's going to be especially important as we are going further beyond Earth and we're going to the moon with the Artemis missions. So this is a really exciting time to be part of the space program. And as was mentioned, we'll be sending the first woman and the first person of color to the moon. This is really thrilling. So for that, we'll need a lander vehicle. We're really involved right now in trying to pick which vehicle is going to actually land on the moon, what will take us there. So that, of course, involves a lot of international collaboration, a lot of engineering, design, safety. And we also do things like learning how to grow crops in space. This is going to be absolutely critical as we go farther and farther afield and spend more and more time in orbit and beyond. We learn how to do science that is not only interesting from just a fundamental research perspective, but also learning how the human body functions in space. This is Kate Rubins looking at some heart cells under a microscope in orbit. And of course, we are ourselves, our bodies are one of the most interesting experiments that we do in space. And of course, we'll be learning how to do geology. So we are using that neutral buoyancy laboratory to also figure out how to do moonwalking and not just spacewalking outside of the space station. So again, this is just, it feels a little bit like science fiction every day that we go to work now. There's so many different interesting things. But I wanted to end back on a picture of myself as an undergrad doing my first ever space grant funded field research experience. And I think you can maybe see it in my eyes. I'm equal parts really excited to be there, absolutely thrilled, just totally not in belief that I've made it to this really interesting ecosystem, but also feeling a little bit overwhelmed and like I don't know what I'm doing. And I just want to speak to all of the students out there. If you are ever feeling that way, just rest assured that that's normal. You're on the right path. And I really urge you to keep going. If on the other hand, you feel like you are exactly on the right path and you know exactly what you're doing, keep going and don't forget to bring some friends with you. Make sure that you are sharing that excitement with those around you. I think anything that we do is so much bigger if you bring a team, if you bring mentors and mentees along with you. And so with that, I really want to take some time to answer your questions and looking forward to speaking with you. Thank you all so much.
Thank you very much, Zena. Hello, everyone. My name is Joby Cook, and I'm the Associate Director of the North Carolina Space Grant. And we are very proud of Zena and her accomplishments and have been actively following her pursuits for a number of years now, as you can tell. Zena, we do have several questions in the Q&A that I would like to begin, and we have some great questions here, so let's just get started. What is the lifespan of the ISS? Will it be decommissioned in the next decade or two?
That's a really good question, and we don't totally know the answer. The space station has been in operation for 20 years now. It celebrated its 20th birthday this last year, which is awesome. I mean, we have college students now who have never been alive without permanent human presence in space. So it's a great question. We think maybe one of the next directions we'll go with the space station is having more commercial partners and private astronauts joining us in orbit, and we'll let the space station become the low Earth orbit platform for research as NASA goes even further afield. They had spoken a little bit about maybe trying to recycle some pieces of the space station for the Lunar Gateway. I don't think we will actually wind up doing that, but yeah, it's a little bit TBD, so stay tuned.
Very good. Next question. What is your advice for students who want a career as an astronaut? By the way, Zena is a great name for an astronaut.
Thank you. You can thank my mom for that. It was my grandma's name. Yeah, so I guess it's hard to give specific advice because if you take a look at any of my classmates or any of the current astronaut corps, one thing that you'll notice is there is no single path to becoming an astronaut. So that should be encouraging news. There are lots of different ways to get here. You can be a test pilot, you can be an engineer, you can be a geobiologist like myself. Really just pursue whatever interests you the most. But the one thing that we do all have in common is that we work in teams. We had a very team-oriented history, whether that was as a pilot or as a scientist or an engineer. And we love to be interdisciplinary. And then beyond that, I think the best thing to do is to find role models and find mentors. Find a role model who's someone not necessarily that far ahead of you, whose path you really want to follow. And then you can start to improvise from there, you know, pursue things that they did, but then take whatever interesting detours and side paths come your way, and then find mentors who will help open doors for you, keep you encouraged when you are not being your own best friend, and just keep at it. Don't be afraid to fail. Keep going.
Awesome. And this is a great question that's kind of an extension of the one you just answered. What is your message to the elementary and middle school students that are in our audience today?
Yeah, I think it's never too early to start doing research. Don't wait until someone tells you you are old enough or smart enough. You are smart enough now to do research. And you can find something interesting in your own backyard to look at and study, and just don't be afraid to put yourselves out there. Be a scientist now. You're growing up in the most exciting time to be getting excited about space research.
Absolutely. Another question, we've got a lot of them and this is great. Why does the spacesuit weigh 300 pounds? Is there a particular reason as to why you would not want to reduce the weight?
We absolutely would love to reduce the weight, but it carries a lot of really important life support systems. So I think of it less like wearing an outfit and more like wearing a spaceship, a little mini spaceship for one. So one of the heaviest parts of it is actually the life support backpack. It's called the PLIS. And so this is all of your oxygen supply, your CO2 scrubbing, your cooling loop. So there's a lot of really heavy equipment. And then, of course, the thing itself, in order to maintain pressure in the vacuum of space, you need robust joints. And so those are big, thick bearings that you have to operate against. Of course, when you are in orbit and you're in basically constant free fall, you don't feel that 300 pounds. So, we really just feel that when you're on the pool deck here on Earth for training. But in space, the hardest part of it is squeezing against that pressurized glove. It's like, imagine squeezing a tennis ball over and over for 6.5 hours.
Good grief. Another question, did you have an internship at one of the NASA centers as an undergraduate?
Not officially, actually, and I wish that I had. And so that's another thing you should absolutely pursue if you're interested in it. I didn't even know that it existed when I was, the right age to be applying. I was very fortunate as an undergraduate to at least get to do some field research with several NASA scientists. And again, that was through a lot of my North Carolina Space Grant experiences. And so it was really actually those connections that snowballed and introduced me to more and more people in the space sciences community, and opened a lot of doors for me. But yeah, I definitely work with lots of interns at the Johnson Space Center and other centers, and it's really something you should pursue.
Great. Another excellent question. From all of your training so far, what's the one thing you can't wait to do once you get into space? Some astronauts say just look out the window at the Earth below.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And it's really hard to imagine what that view is going to look like, peering out of the space station cupola window. It's this big kind of bay window that's looking right down over the Earth. And I can imagine that I'm going to spend hours and hours and hours there, just absolutely lost in the view. I am most excited for two things. I think one is doing a spacewalk. It's been really difficult, but really engaging and interesting training. And I just love the notion of getting to go out the door, so to speak, and helping to fix something or replace something and upgrade the station. One of the next spacewalk series they're doing is an upgrade to the solar arrays. The space station has been entirely solar energy based for 20 years now, and we've got some exciting updated technology, so it's time for an upgrade. The other thing I'm excited about is just getting to know what science payloads I'm going to be working on, and those are different with every mission, so can't wait to find out what science I'll be doing.
And we can't wait to see what you're going to be working on. I love that there are so many educators and pre-college age students in the audience today. So here's another education-based question. I'm an early childhood teacher and a big fan of NASA. Every opportunity I have, I share the latest launches and activities on the space station. I encourage my students ages 3 to 5 to remember that they can be astronauts too. One day we will need farmers and teachers and emergency responders on Mars too. When did you first fall in love with science? Any advice for us early childhood teachers and even parents?
Yeah, gosh, some of my classmates grew up wanting to be an astronaut, and I wasn't one of those people, believe it or not. I wanted to be everything from a novelist to a SEAL trainer at the zoo. And I think I feel very lucky that my parents encouraged me to pursue whatever wild thing I was most interested in at the time. But I think it really was early on my mom taking me to see meteor showers at the local park and just letting me dig around in the backyard and tear things apart and just, figure out what little piece of research I wanted to do in my own yard. that really got me going in science. And then it was a high school biology teacher who actually sent me down the path of research and laboratory research and encouraged me as a high school student to get involved in a local laboratory at the university in my town. And it had never occurred to me that I could do that as a high school student. I thought that was something that you did as a graduate student or even later, and that I, wasn't old enough or ready to do that. And so just having somebody tell me, why not? What do you have to lose? Just go for it. Don't be afraid to cold call somebody, email them and say, hey, I have no experience, but I'd love to get some. That was really eye-opening for me. But yeah, I think having the chance to just meander through whatever was interesting me at the time was really ultimately what took me here to NASA.
Great. And I love all of these questions that are coming in from students that are thinking about their career pathways. Another question on the topic of not being afraid to fail. What do you think is the biggest failure on your career path that you have learned the most from?
Oh man, I mean, I'm laughing because there's so many to choose from. Yeah, I mean, I think about times when I chose to do something maybe non-standard or that felt like it might not have been the best choice at the time. I, took a semester off from college as an undergraduate. I took another semester off after I graduated college just to go be on a boat, to go do research. It, at one time meant not being in the honors program anymore. And I was very stressed about that. But in hindsight, that's absolutely okay. I was more excited about pursuing that research path. I have, failed some very big exams in my life as a graduate student, as now an astronaut. I've really, I've spent time struggling with Russian language classes. I've spent time struggling with the spacewalk training. I mean, we've talked a little bit about how physically demanding that spacesuit is, and it doesn't fit me very well. But instead of thinking about all of the ways that it's going wrong, learning to, take those experiences and just try to rebuild myself, and how does that make me stronger, and what do I want to take forward from this rather than what's holding me back, and just choosing what you focus on. So I think, yeah, learning how to fail is an ongoing lesson for me, and it's one that I really hope to convey. You shouldn't be afraid of, and yeah, be excited to fail. You learn so much every time that you challenge yourself.
Great. And continuing on with these student-centric questions, which I love, there are several in the Q&A related to Mars. What is the current estimate on the first manned mission to Mars? And do you hope to be one of the astronauts on it?
Yeah, it's, I don't have, for better or worse, an official answer for you about when we think we're going, but that is the reason that we're going to the moon. Low Earth orbit is about 250 miles from the surface of the Earth. Going to the moon is an order of magnitude farther. Going to Mars is an order of magnitude farther than the moon even. And so we don't really know the technologies that we need. We don't have everything figured out for how to support human life, even for the transit to get to Mars. How do you deal with radiation in the human body? How is the human body going to perform in, that weightlessness environment for two plus years that it takes to get there? And then, of course, let alone what it's going to take to do research and build a habitat on the surface of Mars. So we really want to work that out on the moon first, when the round trip is a couple of days rather than a couple of years. But I really do think that it's going to be in my career time as an astronaut. And yeah, of course I want to go. I think that would be amazing. But I'll be really excited to see you all get to Mars. And I'm extremely confident, even more confident than in my career, that it'll be in your careers.
Great. And I love this question because I know you can relate to this one. I've always wanted to do field research, but always thought it was for graduate students. How can an undergraduate student do field research without the expertise?
Yeah, you are speaking to, let's see, college sophomore Zena in a really profound way. I was in your boots exactly, and I think my answer is to just put yourself out there. I remember really wanting to go to Antarctica and sending an email to about 88 different PIs, principal investigators. I just looked them up online. I looked up everybody I could find who was doing research in Antarctica at the time. And I sent them an email out of the blue that said something like, "Dear so-and-so, my name is Zena. I'm an undergrad. I have no experience, but here's my resume and I'd love to join." And, most of them don't even respond. And of those who responded, most of them said no, 2 said maybe. And I, just kept poking at them. One of them wound up being a connection that didn't take me to Antarctica, but, got me a different research experience. And so don't be afraid to take those other things that maybe don't seem like exactly where you want to go, but seem interesting. And that person is willing and engaged and ready to be a mentor to you, and really, seize onto those opportunities. But just put yourself out there. You've got nothing to lose.
And so here's another student question. What are some hidden tips an insider can give to prospective astronaut applicants? What are the biggest strengths to enhance and weaknesses to quash?
Yeah, I think a running theme you'll hear me talk about is that teamwork aspect. You do want to be really strong in your field. You want to be pursuing something that you love and to stand out in whatever research or engineering or piloting endeavor that you're doing. But I think more importantly is that teamwork aspect. And, what are you like when you're in a challenging environment and you're with people that you maybe didn't choose to be with, but who are all there with the same shared common goal? And, don't be afraid to be interdisciplinary. Try to involve different fields and yeah, just keep going. There's no one single path to becoming an astronaut. So just pursue whatever makes you the most excited.
As an extension to that, what do you suggest to those of us with a master's or PhD do after graduating if we want to be an astronaut? Should we be focused on trying to work directly with NASA?
Yeah, so again, there's no one single right answer. And, you could maybe take a look at people who are in the astronaut corps or who work at NASA, whose research, whose career path you really identify with, and get in touch with them for some advice, because maybe the right path for you is different than the right path was for me. I can assure you, a lot of times during my career that I didn't think I was on the right path. But ultimately, I just wanted to wake up every day doing something that interested me. I was a grad student when I was selected for NASA, and so I can really identify with not knowing what you're going to be doing after grad school. I feel really lucky that I got this job, but ultimately I just wanted to keep working with people who wanted to work with me. I think that's the most important thing, and if you do that, then no matter where you wind up, you'll be happy, you'll be fulfilled.
This kind of brings in some of your other minors and areas of interest as an undergraduate. I am impressed that you have an interest in the humanities as well. Did you win a poetry award?
Oh gosh, I'm not sure that my poetry is ever award-winning, but I did an undergraduate thesis in poetry writing and creative writing at Chapel Hill. And to me, there's actually, I think, a lot of commonalities between research and the humanities and creative pursuits. To me, science is about exploring the world around you and trying to make sense of my place in the world and the universe. And I feel exactly the same about creative writing. It's my way of exploring the world around me and thinking about what is possible, what might have been. So there are a lot of things that are, really that come together and are answering the same questions, but from really different perspectives.
Great, and it looks like I love this Q&A time. It looks like we have time for maybe 2 or 3 more questions. We'll see how it goes. Another question for you. You mentioned that you could be flying in the SpaceX Dragon. Is there any more information that you can go into depth with? Also, it is common that NASA and their astronauts collaborate with SpaceX. And is there any more that you could mention that relates to working with them?
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting things about working at NASA right now is that we have all of these different options. We might go on an international vehicle like the Soyuz, which we've been flying for decades now, or we might be working with one of our commercial partners. And so for now, the SpaceX Dragon has flown exclusively NASA astronauts, but that's going to be changing actually in the next couple of years, in the really near term future. We'll start seeing private astronauts. I'm sure you've seen the Inspiration 4 mission advertised. You see Axiom Space starting to prepare astronauts for flight in low Earth orbit. So it's an interesting time, and I think a pivotal time in NASA's history. But in my mind, the more options we have, the more collaborators we have, the more different paths, whether that's through just NASA and the government contractors, private companies, the more options we have, the better the product will be ultimately. And that product is space exploration for everyone, for all of you.
Right. Is Artemis still on track for this fall for a crewless flight around the moon?
Yeah, so Artemis 1 is really still on schedule. That actual vehicle is at Cape Canaveral right now. The core stage is on a barge being shipped to Cape Canaveral, and in the month of May, it's going to be brought upright, and the crew module will be stacked on top of it. So we are still actually on track for the uncrewed first mission, and then the next mission after that will launch people. That's amazing.
And exciting, very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Many of the previous generations of NASA astronauts were test pilots or engineers. How do you feel your particular skills add something valuable to NASA missions? And how was it to train on all the unfamiliar engineering and technical skills necessary to complete missions? What was most challenging?
That is a great question, or many different questions. Yeah, I think because our mission is evolving as NASA, we are no longer just doing flights that last a couple of hours or a couple of days. We're doing flights that last for several months or even a year. And so when you are in orbit that long, you really have to be interdisciplinary. You're not just there to execute one single job. And so that's why our astronaut corps is now evolving to be more interdisciplinary, coming from lots of different backgrounds, because you really need all of those skill sets. You need scientists, you need engineers, you need pilots, but really we all have to be able to do everything. We have to be a scientific Swiss Army knife. You got to be a payload that's worth your weight, you know? But that's one of my favorite aspects of the job. It is challenging. It's hard to switch your mindset every hour of every day. You might be taking a Russian language class 1 hour and then hopping in a jet 2 hours after that. And so that can be a challenging thing for your brain. I'd say for me, some of the biggest challenges have, been shifting away from that just fundamental research mindset and more into being an operator and really learning emergency procedures down cold and having just a slightly different mindset. But I think anytime I'm challenged, I really learn a lot about myself and about whatever I'm studying. So it's been overall really good.
And I'll leave it with this last question because it kind of ties into those challenges, but things you've learned from that. What is one of your most memorable team experiences that may have been difficult at the time, but has given you a lot of perspective?
Oh man, that is a beautiful question. I think one of the hardest experiences for me in a team were some of the earliest times that I was put in the position of being a team leader. I think it's easy for me and natural for me to be a follower on a team. I love being on a team and having a role in the bigger picture. But I feel very vulnerable when I'm put in a leadership position. And so learning how to, not always be right, learning how to be a leader that leans on the people who are working with them, and trying to figure out how to pull other people's strengths forward and to be a team player as well, I think have been some of the biggest lessons for me.
That is awesome. I will never forget what you just said. You were a scientific Swiss Army knife. That was fabulous. Several people have commented in the chat I love your positivity, and that has been on display throughout your presentation today. And one person commented, will you please send me pics from Mars? And I'll kind of conclude with that is what we hope to see from all of our astronauts, their chance to be able to fly and experience space. And Zena, we look forward to following your career for many years to come. So on behalf of Space Grant and all the attendees, thank you so much for taking the time today with us to share your experiences, and we look forward to your next adventure.
Oh, thank you so much. It's really been my pleasure speaking with you. It's always an honor and really reinvigorating for me anytime I get to talk with students, especially in the North Carolina Space Grant. So thank you.
NASA has taken us to the moon and past the edge of the solar system, made aviation safer and faster, found new planets, and shown us the edge of the known universe. But no endeavor this grand can sustain itself. It takes people with the education to solve the most challenging technical problems, and a public that understands why it all matters. Before there was an Apollo, there was a space mobile. Before there was a shuttle, there was AESP. Before there was Hubble, there was Space Grant. We are a network of universities created by Congress to assure America's leadership in aeronautics and space. We sustain NASA's future by educating the next generation of engineers and scientists. We support NASA's mission of research and discovery. We engage and educate the public. We focus the strengths of every state to solve NASA's challenges. We are the future. We are Space Grant.